Hi, I'm Liv and welcome back to the Book Nook. Hey guys, so this is like my 5th attempt at filming today. I just cannot quite get my head in the game today, so apologies for it being less than the usual, slightly more polished affair, I don't know. So in this video I'm going to be talking about my plans for reading in 2018. Now, today I have mostly been trying not to get myself in a bit of a flap, but ended up getting in a bit of a flap even though I told myself I wasn't going to get in a bit of a flap, because I've ended up sort of trying to plan my reading more than I can and ended up getting a bit sort of overwhelmed at how many books I've got and knowing that there's going to be loads of new ones coming out that I'm going to get excited about, but then also not feeling quite so prepared and conscious of what new ones are coming out at the moment as well. So just feeling a bit sort of wobbly at the moment. A lot of that is to do with just the time of year for me. As I mentioned in my last video, it's not a great time of year for me. It always sends my mental health kind of meh. So just feeling a bit sort of wobbly today and trying to get some kind of logic going. What I have done today is set up about 5 different spreadsheets, as inspired by Sophie over at Portal in the Pages, who has done her sort of reading spreadsheet towards the end of the year, and I know that if I don't start it now and do it as I go along, there's no chance of me ever getting any kind of spreadsheet, and I think it is quite interesting to see, and I think it's good because Goodreads is not perfect, as I discovered last night when I was checking something and realised that for some reason it counted a book twice, so then all of a sudden my reading total was down 1, so I hadn't hit my challenge, but then I realised it hadn't counted a book that I knew I had read, so then I was back up to 100. So because Goodreads is, you know, it's a fallible thing, it's not perfect, I thought as a backup I would do a spreadsheet, but then of course I had my usual sort of dilemma that I have at the beginning of the year as to whether I go digital or analogue for sort of organising. You know, I have loads of lovely notebooks, but then I also do like the sort of structure of organising things in spreadsheets. So yeah, it just always ends up happening this time of year and I can never quite decide what I'm doing. But essentially, for 2018, I've set myself a few... Now, I don't want to set reading goals because I think it's always so difficult. You can go into the beginning of the year with a plan or with goals and they're totally well-intentioned, and then you can end up feeling bad about not keeping to them if, for whatever reason, you do slip off them during the year. So I'm setting these as kind of rough guidelines that I would like to achieve, but I'm not going to beat myself up if one month I don't manage to do them. So the first thing is that I'm going to track everything on a spreadsheet, and I don't think that's going to be too hard. I've got it on Google Sheets so I can do it on my phone as I go, and then I'll probably spend, you know, a little while every week or so just tweaking things and double checking everything's right on the computer. So I'm going to track everything. Now, what I want to do every month is try and read a bit of a spread of things, because when I looked at my reading stats I saw that my translated fiction was down on what I would have liked it to have been, and I hadn't read anywhere near enough short fiction and nowhere near enough poetry as I would like to do. I've decided that if I give myself sort of mini goals for what I read each month, then hopefully that will mitigate that. I may have better months and I may have worse months, that's just how it's going to happen. But in general, what I want to try and do every month is read something new, something translated, some poetry, something short, whether it's short fiction or a novella, but more short fiction, and then something big. Which brings me on to the main thrust of what I'm going to try and do throughout 2018. Now, I'd been thinking about this a little while ago and thinking of doing this sort of project. The more I've thought about it today, the more I've kind of got a bit daunted by it. And again, just going to use it as a kind of guideline, and if by March, April, I really can't hack it, I'm just not gonna. But essentially, what I want to do is make 2018 the year of big books. I've got a load of big, chunky, 500-page plus books on my shelves that I've always meant to read or haven't bought because I know if I buy them I'm going to feel guilty for having them on my shelf, but I've really wanted to read, those sorts of things. So what I'm going to try and do is read one of these 500-plus page monsters a month. There may be months where I'm able to read more, depending on the book. Things will go quicker, you know, depends how I'm feeling with the book, but I'm going to aim for one a month. Now, I've got quite a few to choose from, so I've got a bit of a list here. I haven't got all of them physically because, as I say, with a few of them, I've held off on buying them because I know if I buy them and they're there I'll feel guilty, and yeah, But essentially, the list is Area X, Jeff Vandermeer, which we know I've got, Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood, which I've got, The World According to Garp by John Irving. I've never read any John Irving before. I've wanted to for a little while. I was torn between The World According to Garp and the Owen Meany one, but this one sounds quite up my street. Then we've got Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood, which I've got. The Patrick Melrose novels by Edward St Aubyn. Always been a little bit on the fence with that, again, the white male thing, but from what I've heard about it, it actually sounds quite intriguing, so I'm intrigued to try that one. I'm going to use the word intriguing one more time, intriguing. Then we've got The Luminaries, Eleanor Catton, that won the Man Booker Prize a few years ago, and it's up there on my shelf. Another one I've always meant to get around to reading, so I'm going to give that one a go. Seven Eves by Neil Stevenson, a big sci-fi one that my dad has actually read my copy of, and I'm going to reclaim that and read it. Then we've got A Book of American Martyrs by Joyce Carol Oates, which I bought not that long ago. Never read any Joyce Carol Oates before. I know she seems to have been putting her foot in her mouth on Twitter a little bit recently, so I'm a bit kind of but I have been intrigued by this book. Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. Never read that one. Always been a bit daunted by it. Always been a bit, epitome of white male, but I am going to give that one a go. Then we've got The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Now, yes, I did not get on well with The Secret History, but I am willing to give Donna Tartt another chance because I've heard, I think, different things about the two books, and overall I get a slightly more positive impression from The Goldfinch than from The Secret History. Pilcrow by Adam Mars Jones. This is one I've had on my shelf for a while. Pilcrow and Cedilla, which is the second one. I don't think he's written the third part for this sort of trilogy yet. I've had it on my shelf for a while because when I was at Goldsmiths, Adam Mars Jones came and did a couple of guest lectures, and I found him really interesting, and I got his books and never got around to reading them. And they are about a young disabled gay man and about his sort of life, so they just sound really intriguing. The writing is really bloody tiny, so Pilcrow is about 600 or something pages, but the writing is teeny tiny, so it's even bigger. Darklands by Nicola Adams, you know I bought that one this year. That one's sitting up on my shelf waiting for me. The Corrections by Jonathan Franzen, another one. Basically all of the ones on this list that are written by white dudes, I'm a little bit kind of but, surprise, surprise, all of the big books throughout the history of writing are written by blokes. Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel, just to buck that trend. I've never read Wolf Hall, I've never read any Hilary Mantel, because I've never really been into historical fiction, but I feel that Wolf Hall, if ever I was going to read an historical fiction book, Wolf Hall's probably one I should give a go. 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I want to read a big Stephen King, I want to give it a go, but I'm not too bothered about it, not because I'm worried of it scaring me, just because horror as a thing isn't really my thing, whereas because this one's got a bit of time travel in there and a bit of politics, it sounds sort of up my street. I was toying with reading Insomnia instead of 11/22/63, but it sounds like Insomnia makes more sense if you've read the Dark Tower series, which I have no intention of doing. The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. Again, not one I've been as keen to read, but in the interest of sort of balancing out the male to female thing, essentially with this list I've got a roughly even split, and I keep hearing good things about this one and about Barbara Kingsolver in general. I may end up not reading that one and reading something different like The Lacuna, because that's another one I've heard lots of positive stuff about. But yeah, I wanted to get Barbara Kingsolver on the list. And then City on Fire by Garth Riss Kalberg. That was one that got mixed reviews, but it's somewhere on my shelf, I think. Or did I take it back, actually? But as another modern big beast of a book, I thought I'd give that one a go. There's a few others that will sort of fit into that. Like, for example, I didn't realise John Boyne's The Heart's Invisible Furies is 600 and something pages. Because the pages are so thin, it doesn't look like as big a monstrous book. So that is my loose plan for the year. Obviously there's more than 12 titles there because I want to give myself a bit of choice, and as I've written down the list I have alternated male to female writers just so that I'm not going to do it as a prescriptive list that I've got to read them in that order, but just so I can see at a glance where my balance is at, because I think it is an interesting thing. I know I just flippantly mentioned it a second ago, but this split between male and female writers when it comes to big books. When I was sort of compiling a list, and yeah, there's loads more, there's some more of the sort of classics that are really big books, you know, Anna Karenina, War and Peace, things like that, but I don't have as much interest in reading that because they're a little bit too beastie and too old for my tastes at the moment. But I definitely did struggle to find as many 500 plus page books by female writers than male writers, just even when looking at this vaguely, which I found quite interesting. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do, the Year of Big Books. What I will do as I'm reading one of these ones that I'm going to include within the Year of Big Books is I will probably use hashtag YOBB. why not? I will try and talk in advance on sort of Twitter and Instagram and on here about which one I'm going to read next. I'm going to try and pick the next one in advance so that if you wanted to read along, you can do. As I say, when I first thought about doing this a couple of months ago, it was pre-Vlogmas, I was thinking of potentially doing this, and I was quite excited about it. Then when I sat down today and I was trying to plan it out, and I was thinking, okay, I average about a page a minute, reading-wise. So even a 600-page book is going to take me 10 hours. How many books could I read instead of that? And I just started to get a little bit kind of, ooh, okay, I don't want to back myself into a corner too much with you can only read big books. Because let's face it, I've got so many books on these shelves here that I want to read that are far less than 600 pages, far less than 500 pages, far less than 400 pages. And so many good books are going to come out this year. They're going to be short, long, anything in between. So in order not to kind of get myself too overwhelmed and backed into a corner, I'm using this as sort of guidance, and I want to read one from this list a month at least. Other than the Year of Big Books, as I say, I want to try and get a more even spread, and I want to be more conscious in my reading of what I'm doing. At the same time, I still want to be able to read by whim, but having said that, for this year, or at least the beginning of this year, I am going to try and pick kind of TBRs for the month, just because I've done it this year of reading by whim. And when I looked back at my reading year, I was pleased overall, but also you look back at it as one big list and you're like, oh, maybe there weren't as many good ones. And then you look into it more deeply and you're like, oh, okay, maybe it was better than I thought. So to kind of, I don't really know what I'm getting at here, but essentially I've never read by TBR before. I've always been more of a whim. I'm going to try and do slight TBRs for the month, at least vague TBRs. I have already picked my January TBR and I'm going to upload that in a couple of days' time. It was a lot harder than I thought, and the temptation to end up with about 20 books, which I stand no chance of reading in a month, even in a quiet month, no chance of reading, was very, very real. So I've managed to sort of narrow it down, and I've picked a bit of a spread, but as I say, you'll see that in a few days. It's just for me, I'm wanting to be a bit more of a conscious reader. There are things I want to read, things I want to do, and I want to be able to kind of fit it all in without putting too much pressure on myself. So in a sense, actually giving myself guidelines gives me that freedom, I hope. We'll see. So yeah, that is my vague sort of plan for 2018. As I say, if in a month's time, 2 months' time, 3 months' time, you see me doing a video where I go, oh shit, it's all gone out the window, not doing it, fine. I'm not going to stress myself out about it. Well, let's face it, if it comes to that, I probably will beat myself up for a couple of days and then I'll go, you know what, screw it, life happens. The other thing to bear in mind is that in my sort of personal life, again, I'm not going to set myself sort of goals and resolutions and things like that for my personal life, but personally and professionally, like at the moment this year, I have been put in charge of a whole floor at work, which is incredible, and I'm really chuffed, and I've got a lot of work that I want to do on that floor. So professionally, there's a lot that I want to do. I've got to find this balance. I've also been asked to join the official Waterstones vlog, which is lovely. Yay! I think my first one will be going up towards the end of January. So I've got a few other sort of, you know, personal and professional things that are sort of all feeding in. And that's why 2017 in a way has been a great year, because it's been leading up to a lot of these things. And, you know, BookTube for me has really kind of started to blossom, and it's fantastic. I've got to get the balance right going forward. Otherwise, I run the risk of just spiraling down, because I'm human. And ultimately, reading is supposed to be enjoyable. If at any stage of any of this, of these plans and what have you, best laid plans, yada yada yada, if at any stage I'm not having fun anymore, if the thought of reading certain books is stressing me out, if the thought of doing videos is stressing me out, I've got to pull that back. I've got to find the balance. I've just got to. For the first couple of months of 2018, most of my TBRs are going to be Republic of Consciousness Prize longlist, because I really do want to read that long list. I've been so drawn in by all of the blurbs for all of these titles and what I've heard about them. So most of my TBRs for January and February are going to be those titles, because the shortlist is announced at some point in February. I don't know when. It could be, if it's the 2nd of February, I'm screwed. If it's like late February, great, I stand a chance. But if I don't finish the long list in time for the shortlist, I will probably read the shortlisted ones first, and then the rest of the long list that I haven't read yet after that, because as I say, all of the long listed titles just look so up my street. So yeah, that's where I'm at with my thinking for 2018. I will end this video by showing and talking about my last book of 2017 and my first book of 2018. So, the last book of 2017 is Atrib by Ellie Williams, and the first book of 2018 is Atrib by Ellie Williams. Basically, I loved this so much, and I only finished it the other day, and I have been going back in and reading some of the stories. The synesthesia one, oh, I'm really bad at remembering titles. Synesthete Would Like to Meet, adore it. The titular story, Atrib, is so I love it so much. It's something fascinating to me about Foley artists, so I was sold with that one within like the first couple of paragraphs. I was like, oh yeah. And then Smoked, or When I Find I Cannot Kiss You in Front of a Print by Bridget Riley, I love as well. So yeah, that has ended up being my last of last year and my first of this year, just because I've loved it so much. But I am also, this evening, going to curl up with Saga Volume 8. Now, technically, this isn't out until tomorrow, so this doesn't exist. But yeah, I'm going to curl up with that. I need to try and refresh my memory as to what the hell happened in issue 7. I remember it picked back up again, and I remember something big happened, I think, but I can't really remember what. So I'm going to curl up with that one this evening, and then I am going to, I think I know which one from my TBR I'm going to read next, but and you will probably see the one that I'm reading next before my January TBR goes up. But in case I change my mind, I'm not going to say it here. So yeah, a slightly longer video than I intended for today, sorry about that, but it's just a miracle that I've managed to film anything at all, quite frankly, the way I've been feeling today. Let's see how long any of this sticks for. Feel free to place bets. Have a little chat with me in the comments below about your reading plans for 2018, if you have any, if you don't, what are you thinking of doing, is there anything you particularly want to get around to? And yeah, have a little chat with me in the comments below as per the usual. I'm off to read Saga and have a roast dinner, yum, and you will see me on Thursday or Friday for my January TBR. Cool. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Hope you have a good rest of your New Year's day. Happy 2018 and happy reading to you.